Hey, sometimes when a job calls for like 3 sockets and 1 wrench, you end up doing this. You had to touch everything in your garage, and here's why. All I really had to do was replace these 2 belts on that snowblower right there. Well, what I found when I was replacing these belts was they had glazed themselves real bad, okay? One of them, the auger belt, was real nasty, and I'll show you. Look, it's got like a chunk missing there. It's got, it's basically coming apart. It's like delaminating itself right down here. And I have no idea how old these were, so I decided to do the drive belt at the same time. And honestly, the access to them isn't all that bad. What they do, the easy thing to do here is all you do is you split this basically teeters itself in half. There's a front half and a back half. And in order to get that thing to teeter, what you do is you loosen this one. You take this one out on both sides, okay? Loosen this on both sides, take that one out, and then take this little 1/4-inch one out too. The problem is the manual actually says that these are 5/8. What they are, I'm sorry, the manual says they're 5/16. What they are is a 1/2 inch. And then it says this one's a 1/4 inch, and I think that's actually a 3/8. So I think the manual's wrong there. It wasn't whoever worked on this prior that did it wrong. The belts are right in here, easy to check out. But what I ran into when I was looking in there, why these were so messed up, is that the auto tensioning system on this particular model, this is the Poulan Pro PR241, and I actually really like this thing, but the auto tensioner system is a little funky. Usually you can just adjust the tension for a belt on your own with a lot of small engines like this. This one has a tensioner that the bolt for it goes through here, okay, and then the nut is on the backside. So it's in between these 2 halves of the machine. So you would literally have to get, in order to get to the nut on this side, to tighten it, you can get to the bolt head here, but you can't get to the nut that's on this side. In order to do that, you would have to take both of the augers out, or well, I guess the whole auger, and then you'd have to take the impeller out, and then you'd have to remove all the stuff here, the chute and all that, in order to get just to that one bolt. So instead of doing that, I tilted the machine in half, like they say, to change the belts, and then I jammed these in the way so that I could get access to that one nut that's stuck way back there in a recessed hole. In order to get to that nut, you got to kind of have a wrench shaped like this in order to get through the little hole you just made and then get into the recessed hole where the nut is. This would get to that. You can see right here, the darn thing broke, the tensioner thing, when I was monkeying with it. So it was already kind of compromised. It was wiggling, so it was already bad. It wasn't tight enough, and there was no way to tighten it. The little lock feature on that lock nut, I don't think was doing its job. That or somebody who put it back together didn't put the right nut and bolt back in there. So with that space that I had, I was using basically this to go through a real tiny spot and then latch it on the back end of the bolt that was monkeying through there. And then I would use this again to tighten up. So that thing breaking really sent me into a whirl of all this stuff in an attempt to figure out how I was going to get to that. Now, some of these, yes, I could do without the power tools. That just made it easier to take out some of the bigger nuts and stuff. The clamps, these are all here because I was trying to figure out if I could get one of those clamps on the back side of the nut that you can barely reach. This was great for the spring that I needed to reset once you do the tensioner and all that stuff that's under the belt holder or the belt housing. There's some more clamps to try to get into some spots. And obviously I didn't use all these. I tried to use some of these to get to the spots. All the wrenches that I used, a lot of these, they were the right size, but maybe not the right length at a certain time. And then when I had to put the thing back together, I wasn't going to use the old crusty gross stuff. So I had to use my stacks of assorted bolts, nuts and bolts, SAE and metric, and what I found was that I have some zinc metric ones, and that worked really well. I did soak the things in the night before in some PB Blaster. That definitely helped because obviously I live in the salt belt because we're blowing snow. These were not, I don't believe, part of it. That was actually part of the cable adjustment, not part of the belt thing. And what is nice about these, I'll show this real quick. These are soft jaw. These are like a resin jaw plier. And it works great on things like this. Okay, this is plastic. This is nylon nuts and all that. You start putting metal on those, and they will get chewed up. So in order to adjust this, I use plastic jawed pliers. Okay, they work great and they don't chew these things up, so they'll last a whole lot longer. This is an IPS brand on the right, and the other one is a Sunuto brand, and this one's sprung. Okay, it's got a spring to it. This one's not sprung, so I was using them both to see which one I liked more. In this instance, honestly, they both work just fine. I might take the unsprung version because the weight of the tool kind of closes it shut, whereas the spring on this one doesn't. So when I'm working on that, just to have it kind of closing itself shut was pretty handy. Also, you'll see here, this is one of my shear pins for the auger. That thing is darn near toast. I can't believe it lasted as long as it did. And what happened to the other shear pin was it was already busted off in there. Okay, so I noticed that the snowblower was only whacking snow out of like half of it. And well, that's because the shear pin took off on me. And in order to get that out of the hole that it was in, okay, because it was basically like that inside of a hole. And in order to do that, I had to grab my trusty little punch here and my hammer here. So now you know why I was using those, okay? Needle nose pliers, obviously I was trying to do some tight spot stuff, so needle nose always help. The magnet was really good when I kept dropping the little washer that I was trying to set. This is just another magnet. Safety goggles because it's rusty, crusty, snowy, drippy parts. Let's see. This is a thermometer, and I used this to see what temperature the machine was, so that when I was working on it, to see if it was actually like a temperature that wasn't -10 out. And so it's like 40 degrees right now in the garage. But last week when I was working, it was somewhere in the low single digits. So what I had done is put my Mr. Cabinet heater basically facing the thing so it would warm up for a little while, and the other side got this. What is this? Heat Storm infrared heater. And I love this little thing. That's nice. And I just want to show you another thing that I worked with that day. I replaced its spark plugs. And these are Aries magnetic spark plug sockets. These are wonderful. I'll show you real quick how they work out. Once you get that thing on there, either when you're setting it in, you know what I mean, or taking it out, what happens with these is because usually a spark plug is installed on some type of angle. So when you get it loose, it's still kind of dangling in the hole all by itself, and you got to figure out how to get that thing out of there. Sure, sometimes people will just use magnets or an old piece of hose to get it out there, but you know what they also make is, there we go, what they make for a couple bucks is this whole set of magnetic versions where you never have to worry about having a second tool around for that. Okay, so that helps out great when I'm doing spark plugs. And another thing that I like to use is the rotating head ratchets when I'm doing most anything spark plug related or tight spot related, because you can adjust the head to any angle. And I like to use them a lot in this straight up and down angle after I crack the nut loose, you know, like this, because I've got the torque on the right angle like that. Once I crack the nut loose, I turn it basically straight up and down and use it as a driver, basically a nut driver like that, okay? And a ratcheting nut driver is really nice to have around. Locking socket extensions. These are also amazing when you're working on tough, tight angles, and sometimes the socket falls off on you, and that can be just a gnarly situation depending on what you're working on. So what these do, you just pull back this little collar here, and I believe these are the gear wrench version. Yes, they are. I've got a whole set of these, and these are great. So now I've got a locking extension on a magnetic socket, and watch, that spark plug is not coming out of there. I'm going nuts with the thing. Okay, spark plug's not coming off, nor is the socket itself. That is a great setup when you pair it with one of these to do spark plugs with, the rotating head. This is my Milwaukee ratchet. I had to bust that out, so try to get in a spot. Smaller rotating gear wrench, rotating ratchet. Just some other longer reach wrenches. Milwaukee's sockets here, they're chromes. I love them because they're the square sides like that. So what they don't do is roll around on you when you drop one, or if you're working on the floor and you accidentally kick one a little bit, it doesn't go nearly as far as like a circular cylindrical socket would. This is a long and slim head Astro tools. It's their long 1/4 inch ratchet, but with a 3/8 drive, so it's very slim headed. This comes in handy, and it's also slim handled kind of right there. It comes in great handy when you're in tight spots. here is Milwaukee's impact socket set. I love these because you can see the size easily, almost in dark too. You can see these very low light situations, like when you're under a car, under a hood. And I like the little red ring because sometimes if you don't have that marking and you just have the regular impact sockets without the red ring or something, sometimes you have to like flip it up and down to see which side you're working with before you put it on the impact gun. It might save like quarter of a second, but you multiply that quarter of a second by every time you're working with them, and it's pretty darn awesome. Let's see, I had to get into the Milwaukee ratcheting wrenches here for a while. I've recently picked these up. They were a pawn store score. And I gotta say, this little like bite thing they got with the jaws, this works great on some older fasteners. I really enjoyed these. I've heard mixed reviews, but in terms of my first and second use using these, I've really liked them. They're good in the hand, and they're a little bit lighter weight than you might expect. I don't know how to explain that. If I work with an older 3/8 wrench, it's going to weigh almost twice as much as this, but that's because I'm working with some old stuff. And I'll show you real quick. I've got like really old wrenches down in here that I work with sometimes. And they're built different. These are older metal. They're built different, man. So I guess I can't expect too much out of the new metal blends in terms of weight, but they are strong, so that's always nice. Let's see. This is just a regular. Yep. I guess this is probably all the stuff. And the towels. If you don't use Scott's shop towels, these blue ones, in your shop, and you're just using regular paper towels, you're legit crazy. Check this out. Okay, so this is soaking wet puddle down here, and I'll just show you. I'll just put this on there like that. I'm gonna step on it. Let me know if your paper towel can do this. I'm gonna step on it like that. I'm gonna drag it. It's not ripping. Okay, it's staying. I'm dragging it in the mud here, in the salty, whatever you call this. And it's picking up as much fluid as it can, and it's still not ripping. And I'll show you. It just picked up all that, okay? And it didn't rip. I could reuse this thing. I don't know why I would reuse it. It's real dirty, but these things have done more than enough hard work in my garage. And all right, so expect the unexpected sometimes when you're working on stuff. A lot of the times, if you run into a frustrating part working on something, or something breaks, like mine did, it turns a 10-minute, 20-minute job into a 2-hour job because you got to go back and forth to find the right tool because somebody else repaired it before you and used something different, or the manual's wrong, or something broke. So just be ready for that type of stuff. Working on things can be really fun. Make it fun. The completion of the project is totally worth it. The time spent working on a project, maybe it's with your kid, your buddy, or just getting out in the garage by yourself and kind of doing a zen, working on this thing, gonna make it work. And that's what we did. We got it going. Took a couple hours, but it's got 2 new belts, 2 new shear pins, and a better adjustable tensioner now. That's the way I set it up. So hope you liked the video. If you see anything up here that you got questions on, feel free to drop a comment. Also, I should shout out to this thing. I use this all the time. It's a great light, the Rover. All right, hit me up in the comments. Keep wrenching.